Good morning, everybody. Sawyer County Judge John Yackel is our very special guest today, Friday, April 21st, 2023. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and I want to just say a quick thank you to some of our recent guests, including CEO of Ignite Dispensary, Timothy Fry, 10th Senate District Representative, Senator Rob Staffschultz, Shell Superintendent Todd Fellhofer, Kirk Anderson, and his guest on the Kirk Anderson Show, Janet E. Johnson. And of course, this last Tuesday, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I on our weekly Positive Tuesday Ben and Fitzy show, where we discussed the deaths of Cameron Police Officer Hunter Shield and Chautauqua Police Officer Emily Breidenbach, who both died, unfortunately, in that line of duty following a traffic stop, I think, on April 8th. You can watch a recording of those and all of our live shows on our website at DrydenWire.com, right here on our Facebook page, or just on our YouTube channel, just youtube.com/DrydenWire. But today, I welcome back one of our all-time favorite guests, friend of the show, Sawyer County Judge John Yackel. John, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Ben. I appreciate that nice introduction. Thank you.
Seriously. Now, I'll give you a little behind the scenes. I say sometimes, like, one of my favorite guests, but I don't usually mean it.
Thank you.
You actually are. I love talking to you because I always learn so much when I talk. And it seems like every time of the year, about March or April, you come on. Like, I don't know why, it just always ends up that way. And good morning, Renee. So, wow, it has been a year. Lots going on up in Sawyer County, because every year we always end up talking about second judge and courtroom, all this stuff. And all this is coming to fruition. So we should talk about that. And then also the recent cash bond or cash bail thing that went through, right? It was on the ballot and people get to vote. And really want to get your take on this. Is this good? Is it bad? Is it benefit? Where do you use this? But first, just, it's been a year. How you doing?
Well, I'm hanging in there. It's been quite a year. We have had a lot going on here in Sawyer County. Last time I talked to you, I think we were just beginning the construction project to expand the courthouse, to build a new county boardroom, to build a second courtroom and chambers. We're through that process. We're going through that process, trying to get done by sometime in August, late summer, so that when the second judge starts, that there will be adequate space. There will be obviously a learning curve for everybody in dealing with the two-judge system, but in the near future, whether it's August or whether it's next spring, a year from now, we'll hopefully be giving the people of Sawyer County better access to the court systems, that it will be more responsive to all the broad needs that are out there that we're trying to address, and that we're being overwhelmed by a one judge system is being overwhelmed by all of those needs.
Yeah, so why don't we just get to that part right away? And there was an election, and I believe there's only one person that ran for it.
That's
right?
Correct. Attorney Monica Isham was on the ballot, and she was elected, and she's scheduled to begin on August 1st.
So when is your caseload? Is that what this means? That now it's like, oh, nice, I can take Thursday afternoons off and go home and mow the lawn. What does that look like for you?
Well, for so long, as your guests may know, that statistically speaking, I've been the busiest judge since, I think, either 2015 or 2016. I took the bench in 2015, and right there, Sawyer County was always in the top 10, and then we moved to number 1. And so my job over the last 7 years has been to try to manage that caseload, get it through as efficiently as possible, but then also to advocate to the state legislature that we needed another judge, to the county board, because they have to build the facility to house a second judge. And I thought that there would be a little bit of respite once they decided that they were going to build it, and that officially occurred, I think, about March 31st of 2022. Obviously there was years of work leading up to that, but that's when it was going forward. But since that time, in addition to the caseload that I've had, now we have to create a two-judge system that falls upon me and the existing people in the clerk's office and the judicial assistant to create a two-judge system, which is not as easy as it may sound. I don't know how it sounds, but it's not easy. And then on top of that, construction issues that we were dealing with more recently in the last 5 or 6 months that have been time consuming. We are in the process of getting our drug court up and running. And so what does it look like to me? No, it does not. It's not going to be that I get to take Thursday afternoons off. What it means is that there's going to be more time to start addressing all of the other things that have been neglected as the result of the crushing caseload, like the drug court. I mean, we haven't had one because there's just been no time whatsoever to be able to get one up and running. Now there should be time to be addressing that. Then there should be time now a little bit to address some of the functionality of the court system, local court rules, making sure that people have access, making sure that people who are charged with crimes, who are sitting in custody, get their day in court much sooner, which will hopefully result in, if somebody's going to get their case processed and they've been sitting in the jail, well, if they're going to have a jail sentence, okay, that's not much of a change. But if they're going to get out on probation, if they're going to get into drug treatment, we can do that quicker and reduce the cost of that one person is sitting in jail. If they're going to go to prison, then we can accelerate that and get them into the prison system rather than having the cost of them sitting for an additional 6 months or a year in the jail. So it's more functionality, and I liken it to an hourglass. You have a sand up on top, and it's like a broadband even. With one judge, you have that little narrow of all these cases going through that one funnel, and now a 2-court system expands that, and you're able to process so much more.
Sure. Has there been, I can't imagine there would be, but there has to be, because there always is. Is there like pushback, not on the new judge, nothing about the new judge. I just mean pushback in terms of, we don't need this, right? Or like, what are the naysayers saying? Is there really any? Because this seems like a really good idea for everybody, but there's always somebody.
Well, and that's, of course, there always is somebody.
Yeah.
And let's put it this way. I am a fiscal conservative. I do not like my taxes being raised and then not seeing where it's going and having doubt as to what is being spent on. When I do believe in something, I absolutely fight for it. And it is embedded deep within me that I believe that this county, based on the caseload, based upon the experience that I was having, that it needed a 2-judge system. The chief judge, every chief judge in the state, the statistics bore it out. The state legislature only creates so many judgeships every 15 or 20 years, and we were right there on that cusp of them doing it. And it was, if we didn't do it, it would probably be another 20 years. And so that affects everybody. If you want to get a divorce, then you're going to have to wait forever in this system, because it's a 1-judge system in the crushing caseload. And then what happens is that it's my duty to focus in on what I believe is the most important. And obviously the high felonies, the drug trafficking cases, child sexual assault cases, all of those demand the attention. But then what happens when that takes up all of the judicial time? Then that means local businesses who have misdemeanor retail theft, we don't have the resources to worry about that and to process it. If you need to evict somebody, if you're a landlord, it's going to be difficult for you to get in court. If you're a small business and you're suing another small business because they defrauded you, it's going to take a while to get in court. It's not a magic pill for anything, but there are so many issues out there that the sheriff's department is dealing with, that other departments are dealing with, and so this is just one part of it, of an overall system. That if you don't get this fixed, in my mind, this was one of the initial fixes that you needed to have in order then to start helping the other departments be able to funnel through. Because what is the enforcement mechanism of anything? It's the court system.
Is this also maybe going to be, all right, so Washburn has 1 judge, Washburn County, Burnett, 1 judge, Rusk, I think, same. And these are kind of in your area, but doing this job for the time I have, I see that there's Washburn County Court, but it's not like Angie Whitten. It's not Judge Whitten. It's somebody else that was there for that. And then she'll go to another county, because there's various reasons why judges go to other counties. Now that there's going to be 2 judges in Sawyer, is it now like, hey, we should have one of them come down? Are you getting a lot of those requests, or other counties going, hey, this is going to be great, because now you have tons of free time now to come down and help us out?
What the way it's structured is that the Sawyer County is part of the 10th Judicial District. That includes Barron and a lot of, Menominee, St. Croix, Burnett, Douglas, all of those things are are part of the 10th Judicial District. And that 10th Judicial District is managed by a chief judge. In this case, it's Chief Judge Maureen Boyle out of Barron County.
Oh.
She is the chief judge. And so she's responsible for looking at the caseloads in all the different counties. And when there are substitution requests or, a judge has to recuse themselves, she's the one that is actually the authority that assigns judges from out of county into another county.
Okay.
So my crushing caseload is I've had a part of it go to out of county judges to try and help manage it. And so that is John Anderson out of Bayfield County. It was formerly Steve Anderson out of Russ County. Angie Winton out of Judge Winton out of Washburn County. Those judges have been assisting Sawyer County. Now that we have a second judge, it's still up to the chief judge. But what's likely to happen is that if I have to recuse on a case, it will likely, not automatically, but it will probably likely be assigned to the other judge in Sawyer County.
Sure.
If that doesn't work, or if that judge has to recuse, then it's up to the 10th district. So it's a complex system.
Sure, but that does mean there's an extra judge in the 10th district.
Yes, from that managing standpoint,
sure,
absolutely, it is another asset that makes that job a lot easier.
You got it. I saw on your circling back to what I'd said, giving some props to some of our recent guests that came on. One of them, of course, was Fitzy, the Barron County Sheriff, Chris Fitzgerald. I saw on your Facebook page referring to you had put something out regarding that tragic incident which saw the death of 2 Barron County cops. Is there anything you want to talk about there? It's a different county, but we're all just one big community up here.
Absolutely. I mean, I was honored to take part in that in the funeral of those 2 fallen heroes. I went down with the local Sawyer County law enforcement. They had a caravan of squad cars going down on set last Saturday morning, and I was able to go with the chief deputy. And we went down there, and I was part of. I did the same thing when Deputy Dan Glaze was killed down in Russ County. He was a former City of Hayward police officer, and knew him fairly well. And I mean, it's just when these things happen, I work very closely with my court security or the court services, and I'm very close with them. I know a lot of the jail administrators and the people in administration, and I know a lot of the deputies, and I can see the pain in their eyes. I mean, it's just a devastating thing to the entire law enforcement community when something tragic and senseless like this happens. And I'm not part of the executive branch. I'm fair and impartial. I have to separate myself from the enforcement side of it. I sometimes have to rule in court and say, hey, this police officer didn't follow exactly the procedures that they should have, and so I have to, exclude evidence. But that doesn't mean that I can't express my gratitude and my appreciation for the job that they do, and that was why it was important for me to go and stand with them and know that they have a judge in this county that recognizes the difficult job that they have, and not only that, but to salute to officers who I did not know, but who, by all accounts and by watching that ceremony, were just wonderful people. And it's just a tremendous loss, not just for law enforcement, but for the community, for their families, and everybody lost a good friend. And it's just very, very touching. And I was honored to be a part of that. And I was glad to see that Judge Bitney and Judge Babler from Barron County were there. I went up after the ceremony and gave them big hugs just to know that I'm there supporting what they're going through as well, or being part of it and caring enough to be there.
Going back to something that has happened recently was we had a Wisconsin Supreme Court election. Yep. Does that impact, did it matter Dan Kelly or now Justice Janet? Does it impact you at all? I'm not talking about John Yackel. I mean, does it impact judges in Sawyer County? Does it have any bearing? Whoever gets in, the Supreme Court is different. No, not at all. Does it have any bearing at all?
Well, I mean, it affects the state. If you're not a judge and you're going about your daily business, it certainly can have an effect. I mean, when they have 4-3 decisions, And there's the one case during COVID that they had, or there were several cases. I mean, they were closely decided. So if you tip the balance one way or the other, it has an impact. For me as a judge in general, I mean, just in how like we function and things like that, that really doesn't have a big impact. I mean, I'm not going to see changes based on who is on the Supreme Court on how I do my daily job. But yes, Supreme Court affects the functioning of the state and how what kind of laws are proper. If you have an executive or a legislative authority that's overreaching, depending on who's on the Supreme Court, it could have real consequences and real effects.
Also on that election cycle on the ballot was that topic of cash bail. And there's like two questions on there. And I've talked to like Romaine Quinn about it when he comes on for his shows. And of course, Fitzy and I, we've talked about it. We both said, yes, please, vote for that. I don't know if you can say or not, or if you want to say or not. Were you in favor of that was there a difference between your personal life and your professional life? Again, I don't know what you can and can't say or want to or not say. And then I want to get into like, now, what does that actually mean? Because a lot of times we see things that happen and then, okay, Madison, they do something. But this seems like something that could have an impact sooner than later. And what would that impact be? Did you like this?
Just generally speaking,
Sure.
I think it is based, well, let's put it this way, based on me being a part of this community and then the larger region and getting a sense of what their expectations are. I think that this amendment to the Constitution is a reflection of what the general public's expectation is. It's moving more in that direction. Because I think people, I mean, there's criticism on both sides, and these things are very difficult to explain, and if you're not in the system, they're difficult to understand. People will often say, and we've talked about this, somebody gets charged with a child sexual assault crime, and their public's response, comments on the DrydenWire, why do we even need to have a trial? Why not just take this person out to the back 40 and get rid of them? And I get that some of those comments are just, emotionally related. But if you really stop and think about it, what is important about our system is that the most horrible, wretched person among us deserves the same due process as the most innocent person who's falsely accused. That is what protects us, is that we go through the process of giving someone a trial, even if the evidence is overwhelming. They have the right to have that trial because that protects the innocent. So that because who's to say who is guilty and who isn't before you actually have a jury trial?
That's right.
And if we just that's mob justice. And if you just have people going, we don't need to spend money on that, we don't need to give them a trial, well, that's mob justice. And then there might be a day where the finger is pointed at you and you're going to wish that you had your due process and you have a trial.
So where does sorry, please. Where does this now come in? So for the people who don't know, just bullet point what this now means. And out of curiosity, have you used that yet? But first, what does this mean? Because coming from you, like even better than a politician, you could put it in the simplest terms. This is what it now means.
All right. The old way of doing, of setting cash bonds. The primary thrust of setting a cash bond in old days was basically just looking at it and saying, I have to set a cash bond because I don't think that they're going to appear in court. It's garnering or making sure that this defendant is going to come back in court at their scheduled court dates. And so there was an open question as to whether or not, if you set like conditions of bond, no contact with the victim, and then they have contact with the victim, could you revoke bond because they have violated one of the conditions of bond? So in the old ways of doing it, it was about, are you coming back to court? And that can be used in a bunch of different ways. I mean, lawyers are creative people, and the general way of looking at that is, okay, well, I've never seen them miss court before. They're appearing with an attorney, so I don't care what they get charged with. They're going to have a signature bond. There's other ways that you could look at that, and I tend to look at it this way under the old system, and that is, hey, he's never been charged with a Class D felony before. There is a seriousness to this that is extremely concerning. The evidence appears to be fairly strong. And so I'm going to put a cash bond because now you're facing potentially 40 years in prison. That might cause you to not appear in court.
Right. Oh, right. So you could still consider some factors because you probably have to, because you're right. You're more likely, if it's a speeding ticket, you're probably, or not a speeding ticket, I don't know, first offense, meth or something, or just random things like that, where it's a big thing, but not really that big a thing. But you're probably likely to return versus, because I don't know what the punishment is. It's usually not that much for meth, unfortunately. But yeah, you're right. There's something else where it's 40 years. It's, well, not you as in the individual person, but just that charge could lead up to a 40 years in prison. You may not want to show up for court. You may just want to bail.
Right. But then when you do have individuals who are charged with a lower crime who don't come to court, then there are cash bonds, and that's when you a lot of times see the $250 cash bonds or the $500 cash bonds, because you don't come to court. So, it might be a really small case, but I'm going to put a small cash bond on you because you don't come to court.
Right.
But so it's complex, but it has an effect on the system. And so I get the sense that a lot of the general public wants judges to at least have the flexibility of ordering cash bonds if those are necessary. But that puts a tremendous amount of stress on the court system. If you have a judge who is just doing nothing but signature bonds, that relieves the stress with a high caseload, because then now you have defendants that are not in custody. There's not really a concern about holding somebody and not giving them due process. And that due process has to be timely. And so you go through a process, and if they're sitting in custody, they can start asking for speedy trials. And so under the state of Wisconsin, in a misdemeanor case, if you're in custody and you ask for a speedy trial, the court has to give it to you within 60 days. If it's a felony, it's 90 days. And so if I get placed under a cash bond and I'm sitting in custody and I have my arraignment, I can ask for a speedy trial. And the court has to give it to me within 90 days. And if the court system cannot provide that, the result is that person is released without bond. And so you can see that if all of a sudden every judge should put cash bonds on everybody, let's just say that was appropriate.
I get it.
And all of a sudden the system would be, the weight of all those cash bonds would break the system down anyway. And those people, so many of them would be released because you only have so many hours of the day to have trials.
That's interesting. So, by the way, so the new system now. So that was the old,
system,
right?
Yeah. Go ahead if you want to. I'm sorry.
Nope, that was it.
So the new system, at least in my, I guess, I don't know who I am as to be able to think that my opinion is anybody better than anybody else's, but I guess by my reading of it, it's what it does is it loosens up some of those considerations that a judge has in setting bonds. So instead of just concerning yourself about, well, are they going to come back to court? I took some notes here today because I knew we were going to talk about it. And so we're looking at it from now more the totality of the circumstances. So now you're looking at what are they charged with? You're looking at the police report that's attached to the criminal complaint. How strong is it? Is there an admission by the defendant, or does there appear to be an admission? Is this just a he said, she said type thing? You also have to look at the failure to appear. So appearance is still part of that. And then you need to also consider, does this, what they're charged with and the strength of the evidence, is there a need to protect members of the community from serious bodily harm? Is there a need to prevent intimidation of witnesses? So it allows a judge to look at more broad factors. And instead of maybe having a few mental gymnastics about trying to impose a cash bond about, well, I don't think he's going to appear because he's charged with a 40-year potential felony, they can start looking at it and saying, hey, you know what? This is a serious issue. There is a need to protect the public here. And you still have to balance the system with, are we going to be able to provide a speedy trial in case the defendant answers it or asks for one? Basically, if you step back from it, it is just an expansion of the factors a judge can consider in setting a cash bond.
Yeah, sure. So many people don't realize that. It's not a, now everybody gets higher cash bails.
Right. It's not about the amount.
Got it. And
It's about the factors in establishing it.
sure. And have you, again, without any specifics, has this already, because it's already like done, right? I mean, it was
Yeah,
voted on, it's done, and it was
I,
live like shortly thereafter.
I believe so. I think the legislature still has to define some of these things. I think that maybe the governor's already done that. I haven't gotten anything. We haven't gotten any training on that, or any legal discussion as to what it means. But I mean, you can take a look at that. I mean, I set cash bonds on a lot of these factors anyway. Through, I mean, so you used a lot of these factors in the past as a judge, but they all kind of stemmed through the need to assure appearance in court.
Okay.
Now that's kind of taken away, and you can kind of look at these factors independently, or so. That's my interpretation of it. I could be wrong.
No, I think that's, well, who am I to say? I think that's right. Here's me. It's right. Yeah, I know.
But then the one thing that I think that then the second question on the referendum was about the conditions of bond. Whereas before, if somebody violated a condition of bond, like you're not to have any contact with this person, and they do, well, I could increase cash. If you were on a $500 cash bond and no drink, and all of a sudden they caught you drinking, I could say, okay, well, now I'm going to put you on a $750 cash bond. But from what I read on this, a judge could potentially revoke bond, which means now you're going to sit in custody and there's no amount of cash to release you. Now, that's my initial interpretation of it. I don't know if that's exactly accurate, but they're talking about revoking bond as far as just modifying bond. Does it make sense?
It does. I didn't, that second one I didn't really understand, to be perfectly honest.
Well,
so I'm glad you explained some of it.
I've never revoked bond because I never believed that I had the authority to say, all right, you violated so many conditions, I'm going to revoke bond. That means you're sitting in custody without any cash bail. And I don't think that judges had that authority before. And I think under the new system here, that's potentially, actually what it is. I think I read in the ballot question, it says the legislature may authorize revoking bail for not following these conditions. So I don't think that that's been done yet, but that's a possibility down the road that the state legislature could do that.
When you were on last time, which is interesting, circling back, you had said this is, getting that second judge, second courtroom, and just in Sawyer County, this is like it's an important piece, but it's just one of the many pieces for this whole thing to work, law enforcement, and then so many other factors here. And when you've been on in the past, you've talked about, what is it, the court, is it court appointed? I forget the terminology with these people.
You're talking about attorneys, defense attorneys.
Is it just defense? Yeah, I think so. Because DAs, that's another part, right? And staffing. So that's what I'm trying to get to, is staffing among the others. And I think the DAs, I don't know about Sawyer County specifically, but there was money put into this a couple of years ago, right? Then like Washburn is a full-time ADA, never had a full-time ADA before.
Right.
So it seems like the DA's offices, and I know there's still struggles out there. What other parts of this are still in this big machine? Which parts are really lacking right now? And is it that, I keep saying special prosecutor, the court of, is it? Yeah.
Well, let me touch base on that because you're touching on a larger issue. And so, okay, I'll make the joke that we're all familiar with about attorneys. Ha ha, There's always those attorney jokes out there. And we get in circling back to those comments that I had made about why are we giving people a trial? That this monster should just be, let's end him. Well, okay. We need attorneys. And now people are going to go, we don't need any damn attorneys. Well, all right. If you believe in this country and you believe in our system of justice, defense attorneys are a critical part of the piece of, or a critical piece of the puzzle, just like law enforcement, just like DAs, just like judges. But unfortunately, and I say this in full, I look at the system, unfortunately, people don't want to fund public defenders. Why does that dirty person, that bad person need an attorney? Why is the public paying for it? Well, whether you like it or not, our system of government, you have a constitutional right to have an attorney if you can't afford one. And if we can't get them an attorney, we can't go forward with the case. And so if the public defender's office is not adequately funded, and we don't get and start attracting attorneys to move up in this area, because we have an attorney shortage up here. If you can't get attorneys to come into this area, then how are you going to prosecute these cases when somebody is sitting there without an attorney? And so it's very popular to say we need more district attorneys. And I am fully aware of what the arguments are across the country about some of the criticisms in the DA's office throughout the country. But I'm just talking non-politically here locally. We need more DAs so that we can prosecute cases.
Yep.
We need more law enforcement so we can go out and protect our communities. Well, if you get more law enforcement officers and you get more DAs, then presumably you're going to have more arrests and you're going to have more prosecutions. But if you don't have adequately funded public defenders and you don't have enough attorneys to defend these individuals, you're not going to be able to go forward with the case. And if you do find those attorneys and you don't put money into the judicial system, then you're going to have backlogs and backups because all of those cases have to come through the courts. And if you have a Sawyer County like system where you have such a crushing caseload and it's the hourglass, it's going to get backed up. So you can fix one part of it, but they're all related. And if you fix one, that doesn't mean the system's going to work better. So I get a lot of people say, well, you know what, you promised that a second court and 2 judges, that was going to solve everything. No, I didn't.
No.
It's not going to solve everything. It's going to solve one of the problems that is necessary for a good functioning system. But, we still have staffing issues in the sheriff's department. We still have lack of public defenders in the area. I know that the DA's office, when they have an opening, I don't know if they're slated for any more than what they already have, but in the past, they just have not gotten a lot of people to apply for these jobs. And so, there's authorization from the county or the state to have additional personnel hired, but nobody's applying for it. Nobody that has the qualifications. So we have a real problem here with this younger generation, the 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds who are going into law or police officers or however you want to look at it, and they're staying in the larger metropolitan areas. And when you are in a rural community and you don't have these professionals that are servicing the rural communities, it's a real struggle.
Well, and again, not using this specific, well, I guess it is kind of specifically, just outside looking in, I'm not from Sawyer. When I found out that there wasn't even for that second judgeship, I mean, they're not running against you, right? It's like, it's an open seat. There is no incumbent, and there's only one person. Maybe that person, because again, don't know anything about her or anything. I don't have the pulse of Sawyer County. But I'm like, that's it. We only have one person running. It's an open judge seat. That don't come along very often. But you only get one, and we see some like sheriff's races that nobody's running. Like nobody wants the job. It's like, that's so weird.
I mean, I think for a sheriff's position, you have. I mean, I think anybody can run. You don't have to be in law enforcement.
Right. Like I could let you run, which you don't want.
Right. To be the district to be the district attorney, you have to have a law degree, and I think there's probably you have to have practicing law for at least several years. To be a judge, the requirement is that you have that you're a lawyer in good standing and that you have 5 years of practicing experience, but you have to have a law degree, and so there's only a handful of people that actually live in Sawyer County who are capable of being on the ballot because they have a law degree. And so, that might say, oh, well, you don't have anybody to run against you. It's not about that. I have a job to do, and I'm trying to do it the best that I can. And I'm trying to identify for people where I think some of the problems are in the system or where we need to direct some of our attention. Why are people not coming up here? Why are young lawyers or young professionals or even middle-aged, professionals, why are they not moving into the area to fill the void of being a defense attorney or public defender or to be a prosecutor, whether it's an assistant district attorney or the DA? Why are there not more people, looking at an open judge seat and saying, hey, I'm going to run? I don't know. I mean, but those are the issues that we're facing. I don't have the answers to them, but we as a community, as a society, as a region, need to start looking at that. It's not just a Sawyer County problem. These problems are all over Northwest Wisconsin.
Agreed. Here's a question from Rose. Isn't our court system supported by taxes? As more services are needed, taxes must increase. I think that's questions for you, John, not me, because I don't know.
Yes, I mean, So I am a state employee. So I get paid by state dollars. The district attorney, public defenders, they are state employees, so they get paid by state dollars. The staff that supports those individuals are so it's complex. They're county employees. They're county employees, but they get stipends from the state to help offset the costs. But yes, I mean, but the local law enforcement, they are supported by their county employees.
Yep.
But the state public defender's office, that's been the problem to that question, is that if you are charged with a crime and you can't afford an attorney and you qualify for the public defender, they're supposed to give you an attorney, but they haven't been. And so, I mean, there are times in the past where they can't find any attorneys. And so what am I supposed to do? Well, in that situation, I've appointed county attorneys where the county pays for it.
And isn't that a lot more, by the way?
I demand the state public defender's office pay the county back, but then they refuse. And I'm like, why are Sawyer County residents getting double taxed? Their taxes support the state institution of the public defender, and yet in order for this case to go forward, and I don't do it on just small cases. I mean, we're talking like child sexual assault cases here, and I'll appoint a county attorney because this case has to go forward for victims' rights, all of these things, but yet the state's not following its duty because they can't find an attorney. It's a system that is
broken. Broken's too much. But yeah, it's we have to address that. By the way, if I was a lawyer, I would just go and live in Sawyer County and just wait for you to call. Because
it's a struggling system. It's a struggling system statewide.
Yeah. Holy cow. I never thought about it that way.
It is not just, well, that judge didn't set the right bond, or that DA didn't do this, or why did they go along with the plea deal, or why do we have to give that person an attorney? I mean, all of these things coming together, from my standpoint, it's like, we all love our country. We all love the place that we live. This region, Northwest Wisconsin, is beautiful. But it is true that the citizens need to understand how their system functions a little bit better. We're too used to just kind of compartmentalizing it and not realizing how connected, law enforcement, defense attorneys, prosecutors, judges, court systems, how things are plea deals, all those things, they're all interconnected, and it's all about resources.
Well, look at like any business. I don't know. Look, somebody that makes cars. You have your marketing team, and you have the designers, then you have the salespeople, and then you have the production, and then. But if any one of these is falling back, it hurts everything, and it's really no different. I don't think.
And so the county board, in going forward and saying yes, okay, Judge Yackel has convinced us that we need a second courtroom. And a second judge. The state is offering it to us, the second judge, because the county doesn't pay for the second judge; it's the state. But the county is required then to
build a
ability to house that, and so that's what they've done. And I think they're under the. That's what we told them. It's not going to solve all the problems, but you can fix the DA's problem. You can fix public defenders. You can find sheriff's deputies and be adequately funded and staffed there. But then if you don't have the adequate court system to funnel everything through, then that's not going to work. So it's you got to start somewhere. And I stood up and said, this is a pending problem right here. It's not going to solve all the problems, but we've taken a big first step.
But it would solve this one, right? I mean, there's like two steps. Identify a problem and fix it. Or I should say 3 steps. Third step is repeat until it's all fixed. So, right. All right, so we've identified a problem with the court thing. So, all right, we addressed that. Now right. What? Just keep doing that until it's all fixed.
There's no, I guess, order as to which you should do it in. I mean, it's
whatever you can do right now.
It's got to start somewhere. Somewhere.
All right.
And with the new court system, I mean, we're looking at with the 2-judge court system. We're worried about security. There's still people who are around that think, well, I'm safe until something happens, and it's just I wish people could be in court and see how potentially explosive it can be and how potentially dangerous it can be if you don't have adequate security, because you're dealing with people who are at the worst moments of their life and they feel like, the control of their life is being taken away from them. And when people don't feel like they're in control, they can act irrationally. And when I started this job, you could walk into this courthouse and walk straight into the courtroom and sit there, and law enforcement, if they were called, wouldn't be there for a few minutes. And they're moving forward towards that. But I mean, I think you have these governmental buildings, and whether or not you're with the court system, if you're in zoning or if you're in child protective services, you should be protected at your job. And I get, and guess what it comes back to? It comes back to cost. And I know that Senator Corey Tomczyk, his office has called me about courthouse security. And I know that he's at least starting to ask questions about what can the state do. I mean, because my response was, we're a poor county, and we have an old, outdated building, at least that the old part of the courthouse is, that needs upgrades, that needs some security upgrades. But it's cost. And so he's, I know, starting to ask questions and look about what the state can do to start helping some of these more rural communities in addressing those needs. So I hope that he can make some progress on that.
He was just elected, wasn't he? First term?
Yes.
So he's still an idealist. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of elections, when's your next election up?
I believe that my term ends August 1st of 2027. So I would be facing
it. Oh, that's right. You just had one.
Correct. I was reelected in April of 21.
Right. So now with that new judge, is that because it's every 6 years?
Correct.
So the new judge so that would be another interesting. So would it be back-to-back years for Sawyer County then, right?
Yeah. My election was in 21. She just got elected in 23.
So okay. 2 years. Okay.
And so her reelection, if I'm doing math, which is not my forte,
29.
I would April of 2029.
Oh, okay.
So it's a 6 year.
All right. We covered a whole lot. I could talk to you, all day. I love talking to you. But is there anything you wanted to make sure that we talked about that we didn't get a chance to talk about? Oh, by the way, thank you. So had your JA do one of our Sports Dash Spotlight 21 things. That was awesome. Tell her I said thank you so much. That was great. I love learning. I love doing these things because I get to learn about people that I never even really knew. I didn't even know she existed until like a week and a half ago. So it was so neat to get to learn about her, and you had a very nice compliment in there. So thank you for that. But is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I appreciate you doing that. I know you've highlighted some of our clerks and my judicial assistant, and those are people that really work hard to keep the system functioning. And they're not in it for the glory or the credit. None of us are. If you do start these types of jobs for those reasons, it gets burned away pretty quickly. And all that's left is a sense of duty and a desire to really try to serve the public. And those people are an incredibly important part of it. And it's very nice that, and it's very appropriate that you highlight the job that they do and how important they are.
Well, thank you. I think honestly, I learned a lot just because my wife works at the DA's office, and I see, and I go in there and I see what she does, and her, and Rana and Lindsay. I think one of them will be doing it this coming up Monday, and I see this because I think so. Jerusha's been there for like 11 years. But there's been 4 different DAs. I don't know how many ADAs, and they come and go because they all move up or go somewhere, whatever. Like Angie Winton, for example, she's now the judge, but she was the DA, and I keep asking him, like, so is everything going well? Like a new DA is now, and she goes, it's fine. Right? We have to learn their style and stuff, but other than that, no, it's fine. I'm like, man, that's kind of weird. I never thought about that. All these people behind the scenes that work for judges and sheriffs and with different elections and people come and go, they're still there. They're the ones that are like running the place, as it were, keeping everything running smoothly. And it's, what we should do? We should highlight those people in Northwest Wisconsin, and that's really where the idea started.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful idea. I mean, they I can't say it enough. They are so important to the functioning. I mean, especially with respect to what I've been going through over the last year, developing a new court system, trying to get the drug court up and running with the help of Justice Point. They're actually carrying the load, but we have to be right there doing a lot of it. Court system, then dealing with the meetings with the construction people in the county, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and that the adequate safety provisions are there. I've got some ideas about some interesting people who are very important to me that I've gotten to know over the years that I'll send you their names, and maybe in the future you could do some those spotlights.
Happy to. And I was chuckling right at the very beginning, said, and I think I have, an idea or an opinion. I was explaining, and I totally should not say this, like to you or definitely not on a live show, but I'm going to do it anyway because I don't care. I was talking to, Adam Jarko recently about just something random. And your name came up. He said, yeah, isn't there another judge up there? I said, yeah, I think so. I said, I think Judge Yackel's going to be on the show here coming up pretty soon. He goes, yeah, what do you think of him? I'm like, I like him a lot. But he's really interesting. He's the only person I've ever met in my life that doesn't have an opinion. Like, everything he says is a fact.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, is that a compliment? I said, I think so.
Yeah.
But I meant that in jest. It was just humor. But no, you have very strong views on things, but it's always based on logic, rational thinking. I like that. Like, strong opinions are okay as long as they're not like crazy. Like, I'm a very strong opinion that the earth is flat. All right, you're nuts. But it's always been very matter-of-factly, and that's why you are easily one of my favorite guests and one of my favorite people in the world.
Well, I'm not going to try to all of a sudden take that spotlight and your comment there, but I don't want to sound like I'm so pontificating here,
No.
but it is true. I grew up. My dad was a lawyer. My dad was in this position for 18 years. It's something that I love. I love Northwest Wisconsin. I love Wisconsin, but I love Northwest Wisconsin. It's my home. And I take it passionately because I really do believe in our community. I believe in the people in our community, and I see them struggling, with crime and drugs and all those things that are happening. And it's mixed in with all kinds of politics. And I'm very political. If anybody knows me personally, they know my politics. But in a local setting, what is important to me is if I identify you as somebody who has the best interests of our community at heart. And so you can be on the opposite side politically, and there are people there who I've identified as, okay, I know that you and I don't politically mix, but I really truly believe that you are somebody who wants the best for this community. And that is a bridge that we can work all day on. And that's important to me. It's important about the health of this community. And I get that there's arguments back and forth and that not anybody, there's no one position that it is an agreement or that is the right way to go. But if I believe in something passionately, I stand up for it and I fight through for it. And that's why I kind of come on this program with you and talk to you. I know a lot of other judges don't, or they're careful.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Well, the reason that I probably Jarko has that opinion of me of not really having no opinions.
That was mine opinion. And by the way, he said, here's the thing, though. Has he ever been wrong from anything? And I'm like, here's the thing. No. That's just it. That's why it was kind of funny that everything's a fact because everything he says, I'm like, I 100% agree with everything that comes out of John's mouth.
because the truth of the matter is that I'm still allowed to have my personal opinions.
That's right.
But I have to be careful to make sure that they do not cloud any decisions I make or positions. And so it's kind of a training. And at first it was not that easy, but after 7 or 8 years, it's like, okay, I know exactly how to approach a situation if it's something that I have to be the presiding judge over, knowing that, okay, this might conflict with my personal views, but my sense of duty is enough that I can set that aside and look at it. Because I'm a human being too. I get mad and frustrated. And sometimes I go on here because I think, I sound like I'm not going crazy. Because a lot of these, in the last couple of months, I feel like I've been going crazy. So maybe it grounds me a little bit. But there's one other thing I'd like to say.
Yes.
And on all the highlights of all the people who support the system, the staff members, all those things that you're doing with my judicial assistant in this county, other counties, the clerks, there is a shout out that I don't think you can do focus points on, but there is a one type of person here that is so incredibly important, probably the most important, and that's the help that we get from home, our spouses. Because I know that my wife, my spouse, she has supported me, and I often say I've been the busiest judge in the state. That means my court reporter has been the busiest court reporter. My JA has been the busiest judicial assistant in the state, but my wife is married to the busiest judge in the state, and that has a lot of impact. And there was a time where I just came home one time and she's like, "You're putting all of your effort into that," and I'm like, "You know what? You're right. I put my effort into work and I try to do the best job I can, and I'm spent at the end of the day, and I have promised her that I'm going to give her a better version of myself, because
Oh,
those spouses go through a lot, having to see, what we go through, and
yeah, man.
and they're there, and I just want to give a shout out to my wife and how much I appreciate everything that she's done.
I was gonna make a joke that you must have gotten in trouble recently,
Well, then
but
you can she'll yell at you for that.
yeah,
But go
but
ahead.
that's totally true because my mom, of course, dad being the sheriff for 28 years and in law enforcement for 40 years, I got to see, how mom had to. The jobs like yourself and the one that dad had. Okay, good. See, it's a good thing I didn't really say anything over the because Tracy's
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah.
I did get to see that, and it has an impact, and it takes. It's not just you; it's you and your wife, and it's hard to really explain that unless you see it or you have lived it. So, 100% agree, John. Thank you
Children
so
too.
much. Children too.
Yeah.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much for
Ben.
coming on, man. Oh, it's a
Have a
pleasure.
great day.
All right, special thank you to our guest today, Sawyer County Judge John Yackel, for coming on and having a chat with us. I'll see you right back here on Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back for our weekly Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show. And then on Wednesday, 25th Senate District, Senator Romaine Quinn will be on to discuss all things happening in Madison and in the 25th Senate District. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.